From Chicago's Can TV, this is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Chicago Newsroom here on Can TV. I'm Ken Davis. You know what? This Chicago municipal election thing is actually getting real. I just noticed this morning in the paper that early voting is beginning a little more than 2 weeks away. The downtown polling place opens on Tuesday, January 28th. Early voting in the ward starts a few days after that. So are you ready? Have you decided on your mayor candidate, your alderman? See, I don't have to worry about aldermen. I live in one of those cherished wards where our alderman is running unopposed. So this is a perfect time to bring in one of my favorite political observers to help us sort things out. The thing is, this guy used to be on our show all the time, but that was before he got his own daily radio show, and he really was just too busy to visit us anymore. And now, for the worst of all reasons, he's back at the Chicago Newsroom table because a couple of weeks ago he got inexplicably canned from his very popular show. So I have very mixed feelings today. As I say once again, Ben Joravsky, welcome to Chicago Newsroom.
Very good.
And I'm so sorry that they took away your radio show. It was a great radio show. I loved it. And I, of course, had the honor of being on it a few times. And I'm really sorry that that happened.
Yeah, me too.
But you know, they hire you to fire you.
Yes, that's what I was told when they fired me. By the way, was that a pun?
What's that?
When you said I couldn't be here until I got canned?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Ken. Didn't mean to make a joke in the show. Yeah, they fired me. Yep, they did.
Yeah.
It was how many weeks ago was it?
It was right before Christmas.
It was
if I
no, it was
remember.
right after Christmas.
Right after Christmas.
Yeah,
oh,
it was
yes, right.
2 days after Christmas.
2 days after Christmas.
Yeah, so it wasn't as bad as Bill Wirtz. You know who Bill Wirtz? Bill Wirtz is. He used to own the Blackhawks, and he had a coach named Billy Ray.
Yeah.
Artist for all the sports fans
Yeah,
out there,
yeah.
and they fired him on Christmas Eve by putting a notice under his hotel door, I think it was. So they were, a little classier than that.
Well, or Trump firing his what was his name? Tillerson, Rex Tillerson.
How did he fire on Twitter?
I think it was on Twitter
Yeah,
while he was getting out the helicopter somewhere. You know.
All right. Well, I would not compare the people who run WCPT to Donald Trump, right? I'm not happy with them right now, but I don't go that far, Kenneth.
Yeah. Well, I see it as kind of like Mayor Daley digging up Meigs Field in the middle of the night. One of your Twitter followers said that. It's not
funny.
mine.
I did not see that. He put a big axe where I am.
That's right. You're just like, there you were, ready to take off.
No, I know. Yeah. Whoever came up with that one, that's pretty good. It's like in the middle of the night.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the difference is that the guy who actually did the firing didn't really take accountability for it. It was, he brought in his. What are they? His operatives, his henchmen, and they, broke the news to me. So
middle managers, I think.
the middle, one was like a bureaucrat, and the other one was the station manager. Both bureaucrats, essentially. So.
And you had just had a very glowing evaluation.
I wrote about this for the Reader, by the way. Anybody wants to read it, you can still read it online. It talked about 8 days before I was fired, this fellow Pinsky called me in for delicious breakfast, I might add, at Ellie's on Milwaukee Avenue. Had the pancakes and the omelet.
We're not allowed to make commercial endorsements here on the station. They may have to edit that out.
They're going to edit that out. At a delicious breakfast nonetheless at Burger. And so he called me in. We had, he evaluated me. I didn't even know I had an annual review, and I didn't have one the year before. And he told me what a wonderful job I was doing. Revenue's up, and they're really pleased. They don't have ratings at WCPT, so they can't claim that ratings are up or down because they don't know. There's no benchmark.
They don't. You should say they don't subscribe to the rating service. When you say they don't have ratings,
so
I'm sure you had ratings. They just weren't measuring them.
How do you have a rating if you don't subscribe?
Well, you know what I mean. You had an audience.
Yeah. Oh no. I had an audience. People listened to me, but they didn't know how many people was, because you had to effectively know how many people are listening. You have to subscribe to a rating service, and that costs money. Yeah. And so there's, so anyways, he called me a great job. Took about 15 minutes to get through that. 45 minutes talking about the Bulls. Then I went back to the studio. 8 days later, that same Pinsky called me in the office and said, "You're hired to be fired. Beat it." And wow. And I, to this day, I think that was like a setup move. I almost got to give him credit, you know what I mean? So I caught off guard. It hurt really bad that first few days out of the box. Man, did that hurt.
Radio is a miserable medium, and it always has been.
Yeah, but you love it. We both love it.
Yeah,
man.
well, of course, right. But in this case, I mean, there's no way to escape the notion that this was a political hit job.
Total.
I mean, you were fired because of what you were saying, and here this is supposed to be the progressive radio station and all that.
Beware of progressives.
Yeah.
You know, smile in your face, baby, as the song says. It was a.
But you have to be the right kind of progressive, right?
Yeah, I feel as though you know, look, I'm doing this for a long time for the Reader. And writing about Chicago politics is a rough, tough game, and there's so much consolidation of thought in the city of Chicago. You and I talk about this all the time. There's almost like there's an acceptable view that there's constraints. You have a box, and you have to be within that box. And if you go outside that box, then there's something wrong with you. You're kind of
endorse the wrong candidate or make the wrong comment.
Or be against the Olympics. I mean, that was my favorite one. It was like me and Tom Tresser and Pat Hill. May she rest in peace. And this, you know, that would and the. Believe it or not, the Fraternal Order of Police, God bless them, you know, they were the ones who I had that march around City Hall against the Olympics. The point is that if you're outside that box, there's something weird about you in Chicago. That's sort of like what Chicago is. Even though I think a lot of Chicagoans respect people who leave the box. So, you know, so it's okay to be on progressive radio and bash Donald Trump. Everybody's bashing Donald Trump.
Everybody
Even Arnie Duncan is bashing Donald Trump. You know what I'm saying? Rahm bashes Donald Trump. Get in the box and bash Rahm, or bash a TIF deal, or you know, make fun of Tony Preckwinkle or J.B. Pritzker. You know, we made fun of all the people. We had a lot of fun with it. Gotta go.
And I mean, I can't. There's just something so ridiculously suspicious about the fact that they seem to want to get you out of there before the mayor's race really took off. I mean, like, you know, between January and February 26th is a very critical time.
Could you imagine the field day I would have had with Tony Preckwinkle and Ed
No,
Burke?
I can't.
And
I just can't.
I
mean, and it's like my little button in the car is twitchy all the time. It's like I'm always like, oh, I got to hear what Ben's saying. Oh, I'm not going to hear what Ben's saying today. So I'm sorry to hear that. And you know, I mean, again, these are not new things. They happen all the time. But it's especially galling that the woman who replaced you was calling up guests before you even knew that. I mean, wow, they were booking the next day's show.
I was still on the air. Well, I'll see you all tomorrow. You know, you know, great job, Dennis, Dr. D. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. And Ben, can you come into the office? What? And not only were they booking guests, they were like booking friends of mine who later told me that they were booking the guests and put it on Twitter.
No less than the author of the front. Maya.
Maya, God bless her.
They called Maya and asked if she wanted to come on.
Yeah, she'd come on the show, and you know, come on, guys.
And she said no. Apparently,
she said no. Yeah, God bless Maya.
Well. All right. Well, anyway, broadcasting is a rotten business. We know that. It always has been. From I think, you know, back in the day, like, you know, Marconi was probably the first one to fire somebody.
Ken, you're the only one who knows who Marconi is.
He was like sitting there.
Marconi.
Dash.
What's the high school with Marconi? Anyway, go ahead.
What's with that? And I just gave him a good evaluation too. So let's start with the mayor's mayor's race, shall we?
Okay.
Dorothy Brown is going to find out today if she's on the ballot. Do you think she's going to make it?
I don't think so, but I read today's Bright one, but there's over there. And the article said that she was like 100 or 200 signatures down. Is that complicated?
All? Oh, okay.
Process?
I thought it was more than that, but yeah, okay.
Well, I read it.
Well, no, I mean, earlier on, it looked like she was like short by like
maybe 3,000. Maybe it was more than that. I don't know. I can't remember. So, you know, it's one of my pet peeves, the whole system we have of the signature requirements and this cottage industry of lawyers challenging and defending, and it serves no functional purpose other than protecting incumbents. That's
kind of like the assessor's office. It's the same thing. It's like there's an entire industry of people circled around the assessor's office, second guessing what the assessor does.
Absolutely. And if we went to acquisition-based assessment, we wouldn't need any of it. How about that?
How about
That's a topic for another day, Kenneth.
So let's do acquisition-based circulation of
Absolutely.
petitions.
Everybody who wants to run We're all my libertarian friends. Anybody who wants to run for office, whenever I say this, in the show I used to talk about this all the time, because I have Ricky Hendon on. Ricky Hendon is an political operative for Willie Wilson, a former state senator and former alderman. And he is probably as successful as anybody at knocking people off or keeping them on. And he always goes, Ben, there would be 30 people running. And I go, better 30 than one.
I loved hearing him on your show talking about Obama and how Obama used the system to, clear the field for himself.
I know, and that's always the other counter argument. Well, Obama did it. Oh, okay. Well, that makes it okay. Obama did it.
Obama wouldn't be president if it weren't for challenging.
Obama cut a deal with Richie Daley in 2007. I mean, I don't know if he's always going to be the role model.
So let's see, somewhere around here I got a whole pile of these things. Unfortunately, they're stapled, but So let's sort of figure this out, shall we? Dorothy Brown, we'll set her aside for the moment.
I don't know if she's going to
Gary
make it.
Chico. Gary Chico. Thoughts?
Well, Gary Chico, he ran in 2011, and he ran in 2011, follow me, as sort of an experienced continuation of Mayor Daley.
Right.
And so here we are.
Because he was his chief of staff.
Yeah, he was his chief of staff. He served on
every board.
The park district and the school board. He was a guy who understood how the city worked, so there would be no ups and downs. And this is a sign, Ken, of how things have changed. Rahm successfully, I'm going to give Rahm credit for something. Here we go. He successfully set up Daley as sort of a punching bag without mentioning his name. So blaming everything that
on some vague predecessor.
Wait, I inherited these things. What can I do? So as a result, the good citizens of the city of Chicago, have bought into this notion that somehow or other Daley left the city in a mess, which is so funny since they voted for him year after year, and they would have voted for him.
But only in the last term.
Only in that last term.
Until then it was fine.
He was great. What a great mayor, you're right. So he left the city in a mess. So suddenly it's not such a great calling card to be an experienced operative if you were operating for Richard M. Daley, and its brother, who was on your show last week, probably has the same problem, even greater, because he's Daley, literally a Daley. So that's Gary Chico's great handicap. And I didn't vote for him in 2000. Did you vote for him? Confession time. Did you vote for Rahm in 2011?
Do I really have to say it on the show?
Oh my God!
Because then, we don't have as big an audience as you do, so the few progressives will. No, I voted for Chico.
You voted for Chico?
I did.
All right, good for you. You didn't vote for Rahm. Huh?
And I voted for him because I thought we needed the continuation.
Of Daley.
I don't know why.
Such a great job with that parking meter deal. Let's just continue. Plus, the ties to Burke.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, oh my God, Chico and Burke. Burke was like, if you recall, somebody was challenging Rahm's signature. I mean, we're going way back to 2011. But somebody challenged Rahm his residential eligibility. Is he a resident of the city of Chicago?
Right.
And everybody was going around saying Burke was behind that. Burke never came out and admitted he was behind it. But somebody was paying the bills, and so
he has money, I understand.
Yes, he does have money, and so presumably he was doing it on behalf of Chico. And had he prevailed, follow me on this, young man, Gary Chico would have been our mayor. Had Burke prevailed, or all right, let's move his Burke name. Had the lawsuit against Rahm's residency eligibility been successful, had the Supreme Court ruled against Rahm instead of favor him, Gary Chico would be our mayor. Think about that.
Why do you say that?
Well, he would have won the election. He came in second in 2011.
You mean if
Rahm's bounced off the ballot, the number two guy.
I see.
I mean, I presume Gary Chico would have been the mayor, Mayor Chico.
He probably thinks that too.
Yep.
Okay. Bill Daley was on our show last week.
You were impressed.
And I was. Well, as we were saying beforehand, and I'll confess to this, I am one of these kind of guys who, I meet these people and I find them to be impressive in all sorts of ways. And I admire the fact that they're willing to put themselves out there and do this. And that goes beyond ideology. I mean, I might completely disagree with their views, but I kind of still admire them for doing it. And I thought that Bill Daley made some really good points last week, and I was impressed with the fact that he's putting forth these, what I actually called to his face, dumb ideas about, 15-member city council and cutting the LSCs from 500 to 60 or thereabouts and all that. But I admire the fact that he's like throwing this stuff out in there. He's casting this stuff into the water just to see whether people will bite on it. And I don't know. I find it refreshing in a way, because it's sort of like really everybody else is kind of singing from the same choir book. Okay.
Well, not to disagree with you.
Oh, please! Why do you think you're here, man?
This is,
you're here.
Okay, folks. If you want to know how they can be, here we go.
You put me back on track.
I do not believe he will try to implement any of these ideas that he's throwing out there. I think this is his way of trying to distance himself from that last name of his, which is like an anchor dragging him down, the Daley name. And that once in office, will be pretty much a continuation of Rahm and Richie in terms of how they divvy up the pie, how they finance downtown developments and developments around the area, and just continue this overall planning policy, which Chris Kennedy was on your show, wasn't he? Chris Kennedy, never came on your show. Come on, Chris. Chris Kennedy, when he ran for governor, pointed out this is an effort to gentrify the city of Chicago. You and I have talked about this endlessly. So I think that's my guess. Like when like the commuter tax, and I just don't believe he would waste his time trying to implement something that he probably couldn't get through, that would cause, he needs state approval to change the law. I believe these are things that he throws out in order. God, I sound so cynical and jaded.
It gets him attention.
It gets him attention, and it also makes it breaks him from his brother.
Right,
That's his biggest problem in terms of winning. You've probably had this conversation so many times. I know I did. Will Chicago elect another Daley? And there's that impulse. I think a lot of voters see that name and they just, I'm voting for Daley, man. Things are good with Daley.
Don't forget to vote for Mayor Daley.
Yeah, Mayor. So there's a lot of people who will do that. That may get him into the runoff. But there's also a lot of people who.
And he's got money.
Yeah, money helps.
Money does help.
So I don't know. I never had an opportunity to interview Daley on my radio show. I was trying to get him on the show, and I think they were a little suspicious of me. So they were like they were working their way up to. They were going to bring Pete Cunningham. Do you know Pete?
Yeah. Pete was the guy who got.
Yeah, he's a wheeler dealer. He's a publicist.
Wheeler dealer.
Yeah, and so he's the guy that the Daleys tried out to deal with people like me. So they were going to. He was supposed to be on my show the next week after I got fired, and I think it was like the canary in the coal mine. If he survived, then they would let Daley come on the show. But we'll never know.
All right. Here's somebody who's really pretty impressive.
Amara Enya.
Yeah. I mean, I had such a remarkable conversation with her at the table here. It was really incredible, and of course I've heard her on your show many times. Now she's got $400K more, so she might be able to go up with a commercial or two.
She got $400,000 donation from Chance the Rapper.
So what are you thinking about her? Do you think does she get anywhere near runoff?
I don't know. I'm impressed with Amara as well. She's a great guest on the radio, and she's got great ideas. Last night I saw her at a mayoral forum. Was a grassroots collaborative, and she was, I think, probably the most popular person there. She's so impressive. She got up and started speaking in Spanish. The place went, the Spanish-speaking part of the audience went up for grabs.
She speaks like 6 languages.
Yeah, 6 languages, and so if it's just, being impressive, she would probably make the runoff. It was just based on being impressive. But Chicago politics is a little tougher than that, and. The early polls show that she's not even among the front runners, and Chicago it's a very cautious conservative town. You and I have talked about this. So people are worried, like, how much experience? Oh my goodness, how many times I talk about this? And how much experience does she have? I'm a little nervous, a little concerned. I think I'll go for the guy with experience. And then why? The experience is a bad experience, Chicago. Why do you guys? I'm just worried, Ben. I'm very nervous. And so that's going to be working against her. So she was saying, she's hoping that young people vote, and
Yes,
here in Chicago, everybody's so cynical about that.
Right,
You have people come on, they'll never vote. You can't depend on a millennial.
Well, that strain of argument has been kind of put to rest since the blue wave. I mean,
not in the city of Chicago.
Well, not in the city of Chicago.
The
that's
attitude
true.
in Chicago is you go to a millennial for help with your phone.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but nothing else. All right. You trust millennials? If you're depending on millennials, you never get elected.
Well,
that's the attitude in the city of
Except
Chicago.
that increasingly they're also your boss, so you go to them to get evaluated.
Yeah. In my case, the guy who evaluated me was an old goat.
Oh, an old goat.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, Amara, okay. Bob Fioretti.
Has he been on your show lately?
No, he has not. No.
Alderman Bob Fioretti,
Alderman
the second ward, former Alderman Bob
Former
Fioretti.
Alderman, yeah. I mean, I just don't see Bob Fioretti igniting himself and taking off to the point that he'll make it into the.
I don't see it happening either. Yeah, but I liked it when he was the alderman. Bob Fioretti was the alderman of the old second ward,
Yeah.
then they redistricted him out of existence
Right.
To punish him for
Part of the
occasionally-
reason that the second ward looks like it does today is because he was the second ward alderman.
Two reasons. One, they wanted to punish him, and two, follow me on this, folks, they wanted to put all the properties around the Chicago River into one ward
right.
where they could have one alderman that they
Right.
could depend on
Yeah.
to approve these huge, humongous TIF residential deals.
And how'd that
Am I
work
cynical?
out? How'd that work out?
Well, that's called the Lincoln Yards project. We're watching Rom as he goes. Rom's thing is, I'm going to be a runner that runs through the tape. And so it's running. You're like running through the tape. What? To bring back mental health clinics in the city of Chicago? To be reopen? Nope. To get a TIF deal to some downtown developers.
Well, his alderman, the alderman who is in the second ward now, spoke up vigorously against Lincoln Yards and said, I want that soccer stadium taken out of there.
Young Kenneth, you've been around town long enough to know the game that is played. What you do is a developer comes in with everything. Right. Follow me on this, people. Right. A developer puts absolutely everything on the table.
We're going to put 200-story buildings in
there.
Yeah,
and then listens to what people are clamoring against, and says, all right, I'll remove that. And everybody goes, oh my God,
so
democracy works in the city of Chicago. And meanwhile, nobody's paying attention to the fact that he just upped from $800 million to $900 million. Nobody's talking about that. Yeah. The TIF handout that they're going to get.
Well, that's because there's more roads now and more bridges and stuff.
Oh, I see. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. We need more bridges in the second ward and the near west side. Or the near
You're
north.
So cynical. Honest to God.
I'm skeptical.
I don't know.
Are you supposed to be?
I don't know why we have you on this show. You're so cynical.
You're starting to sound like the people at that radio station. Why do we have him around? Can't he just restrict himself to Donald Trump?
How do you feel about Donald Trump? Yeah.
Donald Trump.
LaShawn Ford.
I like LaShawn. He's been a guest Hideout show with Mick Dumke. Have you had him on your show?
Not yet.
He was on my show.
We're trying for him.
Yeah, I like LaShawn. I don't see his path to victory just from a horse racing analysis, but I like him. And, he's got some interesting ideas down through the years. I don't know, he was one of he and John Fritchie were talking about bringing the National Guard to Chicago. Remember that?
That's right.
A few years back. And he's a gentleman. And so I like LaShawn Ford. But I don't think he's a state rep from the West Side. I don't believe he's going to make the runoff.
And in a way, he's a kind of a late arriver. I mean, his name really didn't surface until very late in the thing.
I can't remember at this moment that I'm sitting here. Was he before or after Rahm? Did he enter the race before or after Rahm? I cannot remember that. I just absolutely. I'm having.
Way after.
He was after Rahm. He came in after Rahm.
Yeah, I think so. Way after.
Okay. See, I always distinguish between
the pre's and the
the original gangsters who were in it when Rahm was in it, and kind of respect them a little more.
Jerry Joyce Jr.
Now,
I saw him on the televised WGN thing the other night.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And.
Didn't he show up late for that one?
He wandered in like. It was like when there was like only a half hour left.
Geez, guys, the traffic was horrible.
And I have to say, I've never met him, and there's not going to be time for us to have him on the show. So I want to be careful, but he just didn't seem like he had cogent thoughts about things.
I don't know,
he
man.
just seemed like he was just quickly reacting and.
I don't know. I don't know what to make of his. I begged. He has his publicist, Sally Daly. I was begging her before I got fired. Hey, let's get him on the show. Let's get him on the show. Ben, we're working on it. It was like, what's to work? It's like, have him come on the show. I'm sure they were like, who is this guy? The reader. I don't know. So I can't really make sense of why he's running.
Well, then let's just set that one aside. John Kozlar.
The kid from the 11th Ward.
Yeah. Again, I know very little about him, but
well, he ran for alderman last time.
Yeah, I know. And what I saw of him on the forum, the televised forum the other night, was, well, I don't know. It just seemed to me almost like borderline bizarre.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not there's anything wrong with that. We're all bizarre in our own way. Yeah.
We've gone with experience. But it hasn't really worked well.
You see?
Let's try
That's
bizarre.
The argument. Yeah. Okay, so you don't want Bill Daley. How about John Kozlar?
Let's just go. Well, they're both from Bridgeport.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. We'll just pass on that.
Yeah.
Let's just pass on that
But
one.
you're forgetting Lori Lightfoot.
Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah.
Lori Lightfoot has been a regular guest on this show, talking about police issues and stuff, and we also had her on as a mayoral candidate. I see her as being a very bright, very thoughtful, deliberative woman, and someone who I think could. You want to talk about this thing, could they mayor from the first day? I think she could.
Oh, mayor from the first day, the David Axelrod.
Right.
What you have to ask yourself is, could he be mayor from the first day?
Right.
Somehow or other, Rahm could be mayor from the first day. What experience did he have? Okay, sorry. Lori Lightfoot, I'm impressed with her too. She was an original gangster. She ran.
Yes, she was, as she likes to point out.
Yes,
she was out there before almost anybody.
I don't believe she says I was an original gangster. I don't think anybody really says that.
Right.
And Tracy Morgan. But I think that she has. You're right. She has that sort of a reassuring quality to that conservative, cautious part of Chicago, particularly in the lakefront, who are looking for a professional, somebody that it's like them. She's a well-regarded lawyer, went to the finest of law schools, worked for the feds. She was
and she has the origin story coming up from a
Well,
poor family and all that.
I don't think conservative, cautious lakefront voters care about that at all.
That's true.
They don't care about that. It's like, why would they care about that? It's like they love
Didn't she have a
Rahm.
trust fund?
I mean, they love Rahm on the lakefront. He didn't come up from. He's from Wilmette.
Okay.
He
All
came up
right.
from Wilmette.
I withdraw that.
Yeah,
I withdraw that,
yeah.
Your Honor. All right. The next thing I have is Gary McCarthy.
Big Mac.
Big Mac. Now this guy, there's a lot about him that's very impressive, and he, I think, I have thought from the beginning that he was going to right about now start catching fire, and that I believe that there are many, many more Republicans and conservatives in Chicago than we've ever known were there. Many of them probably just don't vote. And that Gary McCarthy, if he played his game right, if he picked his lane properly, he could talk to those people in a very organic way while still appearing to the rest of Chicago as a kind of a competent, ready on day one kind of mayor.
Yes, and this was I call this the Ken Davis theory, because it came from
Because
Ken
I'm
Davis.
the only one who believes
No, you told me this. I don't know if you said this to me on a phone call or
I don't know.
On
We
the
talk a
air,
lot, yeah.
but your position on Gary Big Mac McCarthy from the get-go, what you said, and I'm quoting you to you, all right? Now, you can't even remember what you said.
No, I never remember what I say.
You said that the way you framed it was that Gary McCarthy had a good chance of making the runoff in a crowded field because he would get the Trump vote. And the Trump or Rauner vote, if you will, was like 20% of Chicago's vote, would be enough to make a runoff. That was the Ken Davis theory.
Because he's going to be the only candidate that
Looking
really
for the Trump
appears.
vote, okay?
Yeah.
And so I would go around quoting you all the time. So here am I literally quoting you in your own show. Well, Ken Davis said.
That great political analyst.
And, and
it's Axelrod and me.
Axelrod, Ken Davis. So there's some, merit. I listen, and he is. If you're a Chicago Teacher Union member, and this is going to sound weird, but he's great on. He just came out with a ringing endorsement of the Chicago Teacher Union. He had this press release he sent out. He goes, "I know you're not going to support me, but I support you."
Right, yeah.
And there's a lot of teachers in the Southwest and Northwest sides who are either married to police officers or come from the same family as police officers.
Adjacent.
Yeah, and and they want to know that whoever the next mayor is will look out for teachers. I too thought he would be a formidable foe in the pre-Rahm. When Rahm was still in the race.
Before and after Rahm.
Yes, and so I have no idea, from where his path to.
Well, he's got competitors now. He's got Bill Daley, and I think there might be a few others that are kind of appealing to that audience. So, but anyway, I would still leave him in the list of possibilities for making the runoffs.
I don't know.
That would be that's my.
There's a lot of people, and this is going to make it that much tougher. The next candidate you have there.
I'm just wondering if we
around.
I was just wondering if we should, I think we're going to move along.
All right.
Let's see. Neil Salas Griffin. I know very little about him, to be very honest. He has not been all that visible, at least not to me.
Ricky, aforementioned Ricky Hendon's got him on the ropes on behalf of Willie Wilson. Follow me in this, everybody. Neil Salas Griffin. We called him the computer guy on our show because he was like good with a computer. He was a millennial.
Right.
You could really go to him with like questions about your phone.
Your phone, Stop it.
Cannot get that. Anyway, so Neil Salas Griffin, he made sort of a splash when he announced he was running. There was a lot of attention. And then, of course, Ricky tied him up in knots at the Chicago Board of Election, challenging his petitions. I think he's going to finally make the ballot. But
now, I heard that he had made it. I heard a report last week, I thought, that he had made it.
I think, I think he's won preliminary. By the time we're on the air, the show airs, he'll probably be on the ballot. So anyway, but he lost a lot of time and a lot of momentum.
He did,
and spent a lot of money, and so...
But he spent a lot of his money on the appeals. So
And he was funny. Ricky would say, he's a nice young man. You know what I mean? Like he's giving him the benefit.
I hope I knock him off the ballot.
I'm not trying to knock you off the ballot, but you're a nice young man.
All right, Paul Vallis. I don't know what to say about Paul Vallis. I really don't. I just can't. I can't even figure out what I think about Paul Vallis anymore. He's like every day he's got a new, almost impossible to follow financial plan that's going to get us out of this mess. And he brags about the fact that Chicago was never better than when he was running the school system. He's an affable guy. He's the kind of guy you love to sit and talk to. You just go on and on and on. I met him at a party a couple of months ago, or just after he was on the show. And he was just walking around talking to everybody, and they're all like in little clusters around him as he's lecturing them about the percentage basis of the 0.25 leverage. Anyway. So yes, I guess he's ready on day one.
Yeah, ready for what? Anything. Paul Vallis, for the younger people out there, was tagged with Gary Chico back in the day. They were like, I don't want to say Abbott and Costello. I'm trying to think of a pairing team. But they were, Chico was the president of the board, and Paul Vallis was the CEO of the public school system. And when Mayor Daley took complete control, that was the duo that Daley brought in to run the schools and got magnificent reviews.
They did.
From the Tribune and the Sun-Times and of everybody but me, and it was typical me. I was very critical of the way they ran the schools. I feel like they were very autocratic. And so Vallis and I didn't get along back in those days, and he didn't have much tolerance for me back in those days. But 20 years later, he came on my radio show and we dueled, and so I enjoyed having him as a guest on the show, and he's very knowledgeable. He's fun to talk to, and it's great. He's out there. I actually value the role he's played in the election. Just putting out ideas,
I do too.
Legitimate ideas, not like let's go to Mars. And then what he's
they're
really
so legitimate that it's impossible to understand them.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what the hell is he talking about?
But what he also has done, and I give him credit for this, here I am praising Paul Vallas, but I am giving him credit for this.
Say what you will about
Say
Paul
what you will
Vallas.
about Paul Vallas.
Right.
When Rahm was still very much in the race and Paul was running, he was a great source for opposing views of whatever PR Rahm would put out. And I really valued that. And then like the rank and file reporters kind of had to respect Vallas. Well, the guy did run the school system. He kind of invented the TIFs. He was there in the revenue department when the light went on in Daley's mind to create TIFs. So he knows how the game is played, and so I thought he offered a valuable service to the city of Chicago in the early days of this campaign, where people could go to him for a counter view for whatever PR Rahm was putting out.
This is a little bit of a diversion from this, but I was very honored to be the host Tuesday night up in your ward, up in the 47th ward. There was a 47th ward aldermanic forum, 8 candidates. And I was the moderator for that. It was a wonderful experience, but I couldn't help but observe that we had 8 candidates up there, and all 8 of them said that they didn't want any more charter schools brought into the ward. They're completely anti-charter, they're anti-TIF, all this stuff. And I guess it's wards like the 47th where these ideas begin to percolate and maybe they spread out from there. But I found it just so interesting that from the Chico Vallas days to now, about 20 years, I guess, we've seen this cycle come all the way around from we've got to privatize everything to you privatizers are vile and we've got to get you out of our system. I think their efforts were such a failure that it's embarrassing to see the results of what they've done.
The efforts of the privatizers.
Of the privatizers, and the people who advocated for it. And this is, I get really serious when I talk about this because we're seeing it. It's like now, of course, we're seeing it on the federal level. This idea that and I was thinking this morning that I would actually be in favor of a certain amount of privatization. What I would like to do is I'd like to hire one of these privatization companies, like the kind we hire the janitors to clean O'Hare, and hire them to replace the United States Senate.
Okay.
Don't you
That's
think
where
that
you were
would
going
work?
with this one.
Don't you think that would work? I mean, look, we could save a lot of money because these guys only earn like $12 an hour.
No, that's a good idea.
And they don't really have that much to do.
Why don't we do that for mayor too?
Well,
what we actually have. What am I thinking?
The aldermen have been privatized for quite a while.
Yes, the private operation. No, you're right.
But I don't. To bring this back to Vallas. Paul Vallas and Chico and so many others were the people who really ushered into Chicago this idea that especially in education, you can privatize the heck out of it.
Let me give Paul Vallas the benefit of the doubt on this one. Paul Vallas definitely was there at the birth of the TIFs. So you mentioned 2 things, privatization and TIFs. And TIFs, in most people's mind, they just think it's a bad thing. They may not know the details, but they think it's a bad thing. Years and years of writing about it, and this and that, talking about it. So you got to tag that to him because he was there in the revenue department when Mayor Daley figured this out. But in terms of privatizing the public schools and using charters as a way to undercut the Chicago Teachers Union and to hasten the removal of black people from the city by uprooting the institutions that would keep people in a community, that make a community what it is, which are the local schools. That really accelerated post-Vallas. That's an Arnie Duncan, Mayor Daley thing. And Vallas is very quick to say
Renaissance 2010.
Right, that was a speech that Daley gave, which I believe Pete Cunningham wrote, the aforementioned Mr. Cunningham, and who's now working for Bill Daley. So that's post Vallas. And
I stand corrected on that, and I thank you for bringing that up because that is true. I do tend to sort of lump all of this back to that point, and really the real privatization and charter thing didn't really start
after Vallas left.
Until then,
and I think of all the reasons why Richard M. Daley decided to oust Vallas. There's many reasons, but I think. One of them may have been that he may have been a little more resistant. I don't know. I'm making things up here. I don't know. But the privatization movement really took place after 2001. And then, of course, the culminating moment was when they sold the parking meters. And that just did wrecked the notion of privatization in this city.
Because then the Midway thing came off the tracks. I mean, they really wanted to sell Midway too.
They sold a $10 billion asset for $1 billion, okay? And even Chicagoans figured that out. Okay.
All right, continuing on. Let's see here.
Right.
I'm saving these for last. Let's see.
You are saving them for last.
Willie Wilson. This is a delicate one because I think that a lot of people are giving him a certain amount of leeway because he is a self-made rich person who was a businessman, but his platform, if there is one for mayor, is something that I just can't discern, other than the stuff that Bruce Rauner taught him when Bruce Rauner sat him down and explained how politics works, and all he can say is, you got to cut taxes, you got to cut taxes.
Well, have you ever had Willie Wilson on your show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Willie Wilson was a frequent guest on my show. I enjoyed having him on.
He was a very interesting guy to talk to.
Well, he was a lot of fun to talk to because I like to give him a hard time about his supporting Rauner and Trump.
Right.
And I appreciate the fact that he would come on, even though I was giving him a hard time about supporting Rauner and Trump. I will never understand why he did. I immediately pointed out to him that I go, Willie, Rauner threw you under the bus. He threw you under the bus. You supported him, and then as soon as you became unpopular with the giving away money, Rauner was like, I'm outraged by this.
I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah, so I mean,
as Trump would say, I think I met him once.
Yeah, you're right. I think I met him once. I don't know. So Willie Wilson is essentially a Republican, but he's a benevolent Republican. Right. He gives out money.
Gives money away. You know? So it can't be that kind of Republican.
And he's responsible for the runoff the last time.
Yes, he was. I mean, 11%, if I remember.
Yes, and that forced Rahm. That was predominantly black vote that did not go to Rahm. And then eventually, in the second round, Willie Wilson's voters went for Rahm.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Mostly worse.
Well,
and so anyway.
Okay, Willie.
That's Willie Wilson.
Now we're down to 2 candidates left on our list.
And I presume you think they're going to be in the runoff.
I don't know anymore. I mean, I really don't. I would say, and I have to be careful because we're talking to her people about getting her. We're hoping to have her on the show next week. But it appears to me that Susana, we don't have polling, so we don't really know, but it appears to me that Susana Mendoza's star or sun is setting a little bit, that people are not as enthusiastic about her as they were.
Well, the last poll I saw, I think it was the Chicago Federation of Labor, you probably saw that, and she was projected to be in the runoff with Tony, and there's ups and downs, and listen, this has got me kicked out of more progressive circles than I really. Susana Mendoza was a great friend of my radio show. She came on all the time to blast Rauner, and I really appreciated the role.
I've had her here before too, and I really enjoy it.
So
I enjoyed talking to her.
Susana's roots are different than my roots, politically speaking. She comes out of the Southwest Side Democratic organization. She was an ally. I never understand her love for Ed Burke back in those days. What's with Ed Burke? I don't get it. And also Michael Madigan. She's an ally of Michael Madigan. I have a greater affinity toward Madigan than I have for Burke. I just have no affinity whatsoever for Burke. But so
I've heard you occasionally say almost nice things about Mike Madigan.
Oh, Michael Joseph Madigan. He stood up to Rauner for 4 years and defended collective bargaining rights. I got to give my hats off to him. And plus, I really like Steve Brown. You know Steve? You ever had him on your show?
No, you have.
Yeah, Madigan's press secretary. Anyway, so I like the role that Susana Mendoza played in the last year or two of Rauner's reign as state controller, and I do believe, how about this, what I'm about to say, that people can actually evolve. Harry Truman was a Democratic hack for, back in Missouri. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
And so, it's possible that people grow and change, and so now Toni Preckwinkle seems to be going in the opposite direction. She started off, her roots are similar to mine, liberal, reform, progressive, whatever the word was. Independent is what we called them in the old days, politics in Hyde Park.
IPO,
And then she made her alliances with the machine. So that would be like, remember that movie where Brad Pitt was old and then he became young, or was he young and became old, or whatever it was?
Remember that mayor was named Byrne or something? Yeah.
Jane Byrne, yes. She was with the Daily Machine, and she was against the Daily Machine, and she was back with the Daily Machine. Anyway, so I think that Susana Mendoza has she's a very likable human being, and that'll take you far in politics. Because basically, it's a popularity contest.
Yeah, I mean, when you see her come on stage, it's like, hi, everybody.
It's hard not to like
Let's
Susana
do a
Mendoza.
show.
I'll just be honest. It's hard not to like Susana Mendoza.
Is she ready from day one?
Come on, man. you and I, day one. Who was Rahm Emanuel ready? No. He was ready for day one. I'm going to close mental health clinics in high crime neighborhoods. Who told you that was a good idea? Because I'm ready from day one.
It saved $3 million.
Oh, whoa. Oh,
like by the way, did you see that there's now a task force?
I saw that.
It's like
city
council yesterday.
Rahm is still in office, and everybody's already distancing themselves. You
look
at the 47th Ward,
there's
a kid running in the 47th Ward, Negron was his policy director. Rahm's, he won't even mention that he would. Nobody wants to be anywhere near Rahm, you know? So, and
that's politics.
Yeah, so
that's politics.
It's politics, okay.
Okay.
People still want to be near Barack Obama. You know? I mean, some people have one kind of legacy, and other people have another kind of legacy.
So what do you think about Mayor Preckwinkle?
You mean, do I think she will be our next mayor of the city of Chicago? I've been saying that if I were putting money in Vegas, I would bet on Tony Preckwinkle being the next mayor of the city of Chicago. That's just like putting money in Vegas thing. And the conventional wisdom that it'll be a runoff between Tony Preckwinkle and Susana Mendoza. That's the conventional wisdom. And man, I'm looking forward to that. I hope to be back on the airwaves for that one, man.
And so are the business departments at Channel 7, Channel 2, Channel 5, and all the radio stations. And I mean, the money that will be spent on those two bashing each other's heads.
Well, actually, I don't know. They don't have the big bucks like in the governor's race.
There will be, don't you think?
Will there be?
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, just think about what we just emerged from. Two billionaires battling it out. And by the end, I noticed Ron was like, maybe I shouldn't invest in this. I think I'll go buy some Apple stock.
Well, your old friend Fred Eichner will probably throw some money in.
Fred Eichner, the man who owned the radio station that just fired me, gave $100,000 to Tony Preckwinkle 2 days after he fired me. Not saying there's a correlation.
No, there's no correlation. Right.
One thing happened after the other.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a very. I'm loving this. I'm loving this race.
This mayoral race.
Oh, it's just there's something for everybody in it. There really is, and it's just been really. I mean, I don't know if you should say that it's fun, but it has been. It's been kind of and a number of the ward races are really kind of fascinating too. And as I said before, I have to say that I found it really interesting being at your 47th Ward thing. I mean, there's 8 people, and every one of them is bright and engaging and really sort of thinking about the issues. They don't agree on everything, but it's just interesting to see what I would say the caliber of candidates that we're seeing that I think I mean, if you go back 20, 25 years, you wouldn't have seen this caliber of candidates.
Well, the 47th Ward, that's where Amaya Pawar came out of in 2011. Just put the reins on you a little bit. Right. I fell in love with Amaya Pawar.
Yeah, I remember. I
remember there was a debate, and Mick Dumke, my good friend, was the moderator back in 2011, and Amaya he said he was going to blow up the TIF program. I was so excited, you know. And then, of course, he went in a different direction when he got into office and sort of deviated, to put it mildly, from that path. So, I do believe that the rhetoric that Amaya espoused in that 2011 campaign has become standard form on the North Side to a certain degree. So if I had any role in that, I'm proud of that.
Well, you know, I think you probably did. I wanted to bring up a couple of other things here. Did we talk about? Yeah, we talked about. Yeah, okay. All right. David March, Joseph Walsh, Thomas Gaffney. As we're sitting here right now, Domenica Stevenson, the judge, may be passing her judgment on those 3 guys who are accused of conspiracy to change the narrative about what happened with Laquan McDonald. And my sense of it is that it's going to be really almost no matter what the decision is, it's going to have some kind of impact in the police department. Do you think so?
Yeah, I guess. I remember someone explaining to me many years ago, a wise man within the Daley administration, this is in the 90s, that Richard M. Daley, for all his power, was afraid of the police.
Yeah.
And that was how it was put to me. He was cautious and was not going to push for civilian control over the police, was not going to really directly confront the just explosive issue of the relationship between the Chicago Police Department and the black communities that the Chicago Police Department has been policing very roughly for all these years. And Ken, this has been an issue in the city of Chicago way back before I got here.
Yeah.
But one of the first issues that I confronted when I came to the city was the relationship between police and the black communities. And it just was buried during the Daley years.
Yeah.
Rahm buried it. He didn't want anything to do with it until the Cook County Circuit Court judge forced him to release the Laquan McDonald video and show Jason Van Dyke shooting Laquan McDonald. And that's when I think all those Willie Wilson voters that I just talked about who voted for Rahm regretted having voted for Rahm. I tried to tell you way back when, but you didn't listen to me. Anyway, so will this really take hold? I don't know. Change comes really slow in the city of Chicago.
What's interesting about it is that for the first time, it kind of peels the lid back a little bit, and you see the process of the kind of the thin blue line thing right in action. I mean, this is a really tangible example of what happens. A cop gets out of line and, however you want to describe it, does something that he shouldn't have done, and we all kind of understand that it's buddies to buddies, and we couldn't possibly understand what that's like to be out there every day, and sometimes you got to pull the circle in. But this is a bureaucratic thing. This is people writing false narratives, right? So there's something about it that. How am I trying to say this? That we always have this exemption. Every conversation about the Chicago Police Department has somewhere in the middle, in a parenthesis phrase, but of course we recognize that 98% of the Chicago Police Department is wonderful and they do a perfect job, and we're not talking about them, we're talking about this 1% or 2%. But this shows what the regular guys are compelled to do, right? Somebody messes up, everybody's got to stand in line. The union, everybody's got to stand in line to protect this guy. And maybe, just maybe, that's the thing that's going to change. That maybe it's possible now that when when officers do something that's just demonstrably bad, maybe not everybody's going to fall in line behind it. I don't know.
I don't know. That's a tough one. And just think about it in general. If we apply what you just said as a general rule, and if you see something that is wrong and you know it's wrong, will you stick your neck out? Not just the Chicago Police Department, but if you're gonna pay the price, if you're gonna blow the whistle, and you're gonna pay the price wherever it is, wherever private company, public company, the feeling, the need for self-preservation and self-protection is so strong. So I don't know. Listen, if I don't blame rank and file police officers for feeling jaded. I mean,
I don't either.
This would not even be an issue today if that judge had not ruled against Rahm on the Freedom of Information request regarding the release of the Laquan McDonald video. So all this talk about a sea change in the city of Chicago only happened because a judge ruled that Rahm had to turn over that video. So I don't know how wide spread this will be.
But of course, it's a separate discussion. But as more and more the police department actually embraces the idea of video cameras, as younger people come in who are comfortable with it and they've never experienced life without it, that's going to change a lot too, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. I just wanted to talk to you about some national stuff. Giuliani says that he never said members of his campaign weren't colluding.
Yeah, I mean,
I was watching MSNBC last night, and there were just like heads exploding. I mean, it was just.
No, one of the things I really enjoyed about the radio show, on every Monday, Monroe Anderson, my old friend, would come on, and Monroe is her.
He's now on VON, I see. Right?
Yeah, he's doing a thing, Monroe Mondays on VON. But wherever I return, Monroe, you're coming back. I'm putting you to work. But Monroe was, he was obsessed with Donald Trump and his crimes, and he would be taking that deep dive, and week to week, would pointing out the absurdity of what Trump was saying and Giuliani. And Giuliani has just turned himself into a joke.
Oh my God.
A caricature of a bad lawyer and who will say absolutely anything to get his client off. And so now the defense, and I really missed my conversation with Monroe because he would be having a field day with this. Now the defense is, well, I didn't say some people, we went from no collusion, So,
So, it could have been his, it could have been his son or something, but it's not the president. The president has not colluded. No, so we're almost at that point.
The Republican Party, you guys have lost your minds, okay? I've just put that out there. You've lost your minds. You've tied yourself to this lunatic. And now pretty much looks as though the lunatic is under control of Putin. And you don't know how to get out of it. And now you just shut down the government over this phony issue of the wall. And so when I look at Chicago, how absurd we are in the city of Chicago and how we, cling to these outdated, bizarre notions like ready from day one, which we don't even know what it means. I'm not giving you a hard time there. I think we're pale in comparison to the Republican Party, which has tied itself to Donald Trump.
Bill Daley was insulting me at the table just last week because I said that I thought that maybe there was something to be said for having 50 aldermen, and he just said you're just so tied to the past you can't.
He actually said that to you?
Yeah, you can't adopt new ideas.
Guarantee you, he will never in a million years as an elected mayor make one step toward getting rid of the 50 aldermen.
All right, so the last question for you is. Our friend Rahm Emanuel.
Yes.
What happens to him now?
Oh, he's going to make a fortune.
Yeah? He's just going to go back into
He'll probably get my old radio job at, with
I never thought of that.
Yeah, he goes,
maybe that's what it was. That's what they're just clearing the deck. He would be great. He'd be a good radio host.
He wouldn't be afraid to criticize Trump, so that's okay.
Which is good.
A little weak on Rauner, depending which way the wind's blowing, but
he's gone.
So Rahm's going to make a fortune. You don't have to worry about Rahm.
Okay, good.
He's already repositioning himself. He took the shot by that speech where he's going to cut pensioners. They're going to take their pensions away. It's just setting himself up with Wall Street. He's going to be making so much money giving speeches to people saying, we got to get rid of these pensions, but no one's, they're all afraid to say it.
I'm the only one.
I'm the only one who'll say, now that you're not in office. So don't worry about Rahm. You're going to see him on Stephanopoulos' show.
I was concerned that maybe he would just fall into.
No, he's going to be passing a cup on the street.
I'd see him down on LaSalle Street someday.
No, you don't have to worry about Rahm.
Ben, good luck to you, man.
Thank you, sir.
I know you're talking about having your show in podcast form coming up soon, and you'll let us know, right?
Absolutely.
And we will tell everybody about it.
And you will be a guest on the show.
Great.
The roles will be reversed.
Perfect. Yeah, except that then I'm just like this mealy-mouthed guy.
Ben, Rahm's really not that bad a guy.
This relationship is better than the other way around. Hey, we got to go. Thank you very much for watching. You're watching Chicago Newsroom here on CAN TV. I'm Ken Davis. Remember, you can see all of our shows by going here to chicagonewsroom.org, and that includes all of our mayoral conversations, and there are about 6 or 7. I'm up there right now. See you next week with another show, hopefully with a mayoral, right here on CAN TV. Thanks. Bye.